Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Winter is upon us and eyes are once again turning to Eskom to see whether the utility is in a position to keep the lights burning. Terence Creamer joins me to discuss the power market balances. Terence, welcome to Second Take. Eskom has always said that 2012 will be the crunch year for supply demand. What is being done to get us through the winter months?
Yes, as you said, winter is really upon us. We're starting to feel the temperatures cool. And when that happens, there's a rise in the amount of electricity we consume. In fact, I think Eskom says for every 1 degree centigrade a drop in temperature, there's 600 to 700 megawatts of more consumption that comes onto the bars. So Eskom, every year people get nervous because these are peak periods, and ironically it's not really when we experience the major power cuts. It's usually that is happening, well, if you think back to 2008, the big load shedding took place in the summer months, because that's when Eskom has a lot of plant out for planned maintenance, and therefore the whole system is quite tight. And during that, that really the crunch period towards the end of January 2008, it was really the combination of wet weather, wet coal, and the fact that there was a lot down for maintenance and then unplanned maintenance that led to that protracted period of load shedding. So yes, we're going into winter, I think, on a better footing than we have for some years, and a bit more confidence, and people haven't seen the lights going off for some time, so maybe it's a false confidence. But Eskom continues to warn us, and actually they're very good at giving us weekly updates, more than weekly updates in fact, on how the power system is looking and what the balances look like and what the forecasts are for the week. But Eskom has really taken us through the summer period, through the heavy maintenance period. But it is warning, it remains the tight period. A few years ago it put out a very big shortfall that sort of the size of a Kubo power station that we could experience during 2012. And I think really what's come to our rescue is the lower than expected demand, and that's a sad thing because that lower than expected demand really relates to the poor economic growth that we've been experiencing in South Africa. But still, it's going to be a tight winter. We're going to have a peak of around 37,000 megawatts during winter. That's at the high point. There'll be daily averages of around 25,000 megawatts. And then there'll be the morning peaks as well. So we have the evening peak at around 37,000. And then we'll have the morning peaks of over 32,000 megawatts. So it's going to be tough, and we're going to have to get through this winter again.
There's also been some discussion about Eskom's maintenance program and the threat that it poses.
Yes, Eskom, again, to its credit, flagged this issue. Now, there was some of the maintenance was pushed back during the World Cup period, just to make sure that we could get through that period with as limited plant out as possible. But that led to something of a backlog, and towards the end of last year, Eskom said that backlog was around 36 units. And to get a handle on that backlog, they needed to have an average of 10% of maintenance throughout the year. And the big energy intensive user group this week said that they are worried that Eskom isn't finding the space to do enough to eat into that backlog and to do the maintenance required. But Eskom is saying that in the last few months it has been actually meeting its target. It's been actually bettering that target that you would expect during the high maintenance summer months, that they do most of it then, and that they've been doing a sort of a rolling year average of around 9%. They wanted to do 10%. So they're pretty close, and the amount of units in backlog has been reduced to 26 units, which is still high, and they don't really want it to be there. They want it to be eliminated. But they've set a target for eliminating that by the end of 2013, December 2013. So they say space has been created through buybacks and through the lower demand, and they've been exploiting that space. But they admit that forced outages, and that's what really the energy intensive user groups worried about, the level of forced outages. And they sort of say, although you can't do a mathematical equation, generally we all know that the less maintenance you're able to do, the more likely a unit like a power station or a car is going to be going into a forced outage period. And they basically say we are running at forced outage levels that they would rather not see, but they are budgeting around 3,600 megawatts of forced outages for the year. But we've seen it go well above that at times because we see those system updates regularly. So it is a worry, and Eskom is equally worried. But they are saying that it's not as if nothing's being done. There is a plan, but unless space is created, they keep warning that backlog could then grow again. But that's not the intention, that's not the plan, and it seems like some progress is happening.
It is a pretty quiet year on the supply front, but it seems like there are some developments.
Well, the main developments are really around the renewable energy program. We had the first window closing last year, and the first preferred bidders announced in December last year. And we're now in a period of a bit of quietness around that because people are trying to get those projects to financial close. But there's 3,725 megawatts available for procurement there. And the second window was supposed to be announced on Monday. That's just passed. But because of the budget vote, which happens in Parliament this week, the Minister said she was going to delay it till 21st of May, which is the Monday coming. So we should hear the next round from the supply side perspective on Monday, who the bidders are and the nature of those bids. We'll also probably be able to see whether the full allocation's been taken up in the full 3,725, or whether the next windows will be necessary. And if the next window isn't necessary, whether there's going to be some sort of extension of this program, making it more of a rolling program of procuring the renewable energy capacity that we need, because we know the integrated resource plan is looking at a lot more than 3,725 megawatts. So government, I think, is considering its options, and we'll see on Monday whether they're able to both announce the next round of bidders as well as the what's going to happen with the bidding process from here on out. Then, on the just sort of traditional front, there's not a lot of news other than the fact that the Medupi and Kusile power station continues. They're continuing with their build programs, and we're going to go to a major milestone for Medupi in the coming months where they do some of the pressure testing on the boilers. So that's some news, as well as we saw Sasol, is moving ahead with its gas engine plants, 140 megawatts. At Sasolburg. That's in addition to what they've installed at Secunda. So on the private sector front, there's some supply side progress, and we also saw that expression of interest. There was a lot of response to that, to governments. What can be built during this, this gap period that's going to emerge post Kusile and Medupi. What are we going to build? And there's a lot of interest from the private sector being shown, both local, domestic coal type things, as well as imported hydro, etc. So not just the renewable program. So there is still action on the supply front, and then obviously there's a lot of chatter around nuclear, and that remains unclear. There's a commitment to building the new nuclear fleet in the integrated resource plan, but government hasn't pulled the trigger on anything nuclear yet. But there's a lot of talk about the nuclear program, and people are gearing up for potentially supplying into that program. But it's going to be interesting to see how government, getting that expression of interest of like 60,000 megawatts that can be built quite quickly from the region as well as internally, whether that's going to change the game at all in terms of nuclear. It's not seeming to be part of the discussion, but it's something that I think people are starting to think about, if there is that sort of easy capacity available off Eskom balance sheet, low risk. Is it necessary to move as fast? But on the other hand, Eskom and others are saying, unless we make this decision very soon, we're not going to get the units up in time. We're not going to meet our carbon reduction targets. So we need to make this nuclear decision, as soon as possible. In fact, it should have been made already. So what the latest information we seem to have is that nuclear decision will be made this year, and that the tender documentation should be out early next year, and that there should be a winning bidder announced by the end of next year. But, there are many balls in the air, and we'll have to see.
Terence, thank you very much. That is the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis.